coming on after the guy that got Trump elected. So that commercial, I asked them to play that commercial. That aired during the Academy Awards last week, which was on a Sunday night. And it was the first commercial to play after the monologue. So it was like 33 million people were watching when that aired. And the decision to broadcast that then was made 72 hours before that. 3 days before that, the CEO of Samsung was like, we're gonna do it. And 8 days before that, we were actually shooting it. And it was just a couple weeks before that I first got on the phone with Wyman Kennedy and Samsung, and they're like, yeah, let's do it. There was very little planning that went into that piece, which is something I'm very proud of. I bring that up because I've been in Germany now for like 23, 24 hours, and I've probably had like 10 people come up to me and ask me about my career, and they'll ask the same question. They were like, did you plan your career? And I was like, no, I don't fucking plan my career. What does that even mean? And I asked you about it last night. It was like, Germans love planning, which I now learned, but it's great. My life, my trajectory in life, my career's trajectory has very, very, very little planning involved with it. And that's what I wanted to start today talking about, is to give an idea of what it looks like, or what my thought process is that went into building what I do, this career that I have. And I've described this before in my YouTube videos, and I've really taken ownership of this idea, although it's not mine, I stole it from someone. But it's this idea of the Tarzan method. And what that means is, like, you have a goal you want to achieve. You know that you want to get to the other side of the jungle. But instead of fixating on waiting for that perfect vine that will swing you from A to B and get you there, you just kind of reach and you grab for whatever's in front of you. And it might take you that way, which doesn't feel like the right way to get that way, but it gets you a little bit closer. And that's how I've always approached everything. Because I find that in this world that I think most of us live in, the world of in one facet or another, creativity, at the core of all creativity is spontaneity. And you can't manufacture or plan or structure spontaneity. So for me, you know, I was a little kid, I wanted to make movies, and I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew I wanted to make movies. And I was always reaching for vines, and I had some really strange ones. Like I washed dishes when I was really young, and it's like, well, what does washing dishes have to do with making movies? Well, when you stare into the bottom of like a soup pot for 50 hours a week, just scrubbing disgusting fish soup out of a pot, it lets you fixate on what you want in life. And I always said, like, those years of being a really broke, like, high school dropout, father to a baby as a fucked up teenager, it was those years that really let me establish and figure out what it is that I want out of life. So I value that, and I see that as one of the vines that I swung on to take me closer to where I wanted to be in my career. And moving to New York City and becoming an artist assistant, which was one of the worst jobs ever. I worked for an artist who was kind of a cool guy, but one of my job duties was literally cleaning his kitty litter box. I had to scoop out the clumps of shit and put it into a garbage bag so the studio didn't smell like shit. And at that time, I'd often ask myself, what does scooping shit have to do with my dream of making movies? But certainly, in one way or another, was getting me closer to where I want to be. And I was always reaching and always swinging. I stumbled into the fine art world because in the early 2000s, when I was making short movies, there was no YouTube. There was nowhere to put these little videos. And I showed it to the people that I knew, and they're like, this is art. Call this art. And I showed it in art galleries and museums, and eventually got invited to show in more prestigious places, and that sort of one thing led to another. But certainly, when I set out with this dream of being a filmmaker, the idea that I'd be an artist making art that shows in classic venues, that didn't make any sense. But that was a vine that I gladly swung on because it got me closer to where I want to be. And ultimately that led to working with interesting people and finding interesting opportunities. And the television show that I had on HBO was certainly one of those opportunities. And what that was was working with a guy who saw my work, and he saw the work I was doing with my brother, and he said, I want to do something with you guys. I don't know what it is, but can you come back to me with a plan? And we went back to him with whatever the opposite of a plan was, and we're like, give us this much money, and we'll make a whole bunch of stuff, and we'll figure out something to do with it. And he was like, that's your plan? I was like, it's something. And we did that, and at the end of those 2 years, what we were left with, at the end of that year rather, what we were left with was a bunch of content that we formed and patted into a TV show. And we took that TV show and we showed it around, and HBO bought that TV show. And all of a sudden, you know, we went from being these sort of hacks to now having a television show that we wrote and directed and produced that was on HBO. And it was this huge deal. And when I look at that crazy path that got there, had I just stood there and waited for that perfect vine to swing me to where I want to be, it would have never happened. It was about embracing those indirect routes, those opportunities that were hard to connect with where I wanted to be, that led us there. So with that, I want to zero in right now on probably the most literal example in my career to date of doing something that worked not in spite of, but worked only because we approached it with no plan. We approached it with absolute spontaneity. And this happened at a time in my career where I was at this tremendous inflection point. I was on my own, my brother and I stopped working together. I didn't want to do TV anymore, so it left a yucky taste in my mouth. I wanted to focus on YouTube, but I was struggling to really find traction on YouTube. I had a couple viral hits and was getting some interesting opportunities to work in the advertising space, but I'm a really terrible director when I have to direct stupid 30-second spots that I don't understand for products that I don't believe in. And I tried to court work that I could do on my YouTube channel, and that's a very hard prospect. The idea of give me money and I'll make a video that will benefit you was something that like a lot of people scratch their heads at. But Nike stepped in, and Nike presented me with this huge opportunity to make them a bunch of films for a new product they were launching. And there was no agency involved. I was working directly with the creatives at Nike, directly with the executive team at Nike. And to them it was small potatoes because the budget for all 3 films combined was probably less than what they spend on craft services for one of their athletes' television commercials. But for me, it was the world. And I gave them treatments and scripts, and I followed the plan that you need to follow in that space. And we made 2 videos, and they loved those 2 videos, and they were really great. But they didn't take off the way I wanted them to. They didn't take off the way the work that Nike was responding to and giving me this gig had taken off. And I was frustrated because of that. When it came time to make the 3rd video, I talked to my filmmaking partner, Max. I was like, Max, this isn't working. Like, I can't follow these fucking scripts that I wrote and make something that feels like it's mine. I was like, we need to do something that captures that, because that's what they want. So we came up with this kooky idea, and this is an idea I've always been sitting on. It was sort of like one of my bucket list ideas, which was basically to show up at an airport and get on an airplane to wherever the next flight out of town would take us. And then once we were there, we got bored of that place, we go back to the other airport, and wherever the next flight out is, we jump on that plane and fly to the next place. And we just keep doing that until we burn through the entire Nike budget. And I remember Max, my partner, asked me at the time, he's like, what does this have to do with an electric fitness tracker bracelet that Nike's trying to sell? And I was like, nothing! But it's gonna be really fun, and we'll figure it out after. And he didn't give a shit because it was my name, not his. He was like, yes, let's do it. And that's what we did. We literally blew this entire budget just traveling around the world having fun. And what we were left with was this just mountain of footage that really didn't make any sense, but we had fun. And we didn't know what to do with it. And we started digging through it. We knew there was a story in there. We struggled to find it. We missed our deadline. We missed our next deadline. We were supposed to premiere at South by Southwest in Texas, and we missed that deadline. And then Nike sent Alex Lopez, great guy, one of their executives, to my office in New York City from Portland. And he's this amazing guy that we just love. And I remember him standing over our shoulders watching the footage, and he was like, guys, what is this? And he had, it was like when your dad's like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And we felt like we kind of fucked up, but we didn't stop until we had a video. And when we were done with that video, it was exactly what I knew we could figure out if we threw out the plan and just truly embraced spontaneity. before I show you that video, which hopefully you've maybe seen before I show you that video, I wanted to bring this up, and I like to show this video because we are in a world today where it is authenticity and spontaneity. These are the buzzwords because these are real. This is what people are responding to. When kids, when young people, when everyone can click away, can close the window, can open a new tab while your commercial plays, how do you make something that actually hits them, something they actually want to engage with? And it has to have that spontaneity. It has to have that authenticity where their bullshit detector is going to go off and they're going to close the window. And I wasn't so deliberate about it when we made this video, but that is why this video was the success that it was. Let's watch it. Let's play it. I'm not going to sit with you.
Yeah.
So, it was that video and the success of that video that really reinforced at a time in my career when I needed it the most, the need to take chances and the need to embrace risk and to throw the plan out the window. And I built a successful company around making content like that for YouTube. And in 2014, I think, 2014, yeah, I was invited, 2014. At the peak of making that kind of branded content, I was invited to MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to go there, to be a fellow there, live there on campus, and then shutting down my company. But I was like, fuck it, let's do it. And I shut down my company and I stopped making any income right after getting married, right when my wife got pregnant, so I could go and be a student at MIT. And my wife thought that was crazy, and she was like, why? What is the plan? I had no plan for that. I was like, this is an opportunity that I have to take. And while I was there, I was so inspired by the technology I saw being birthed all around me that I started my own tech company. And when I got back to New York City, I hit the ground running and I raised money in a space I had no idea what I was doing, in a place I had no business being in, which is the technology space. I had no idea. I've still never written a line of code in my entire life. But I started a tech company, and when that tech company launched, it was a big success, and then it started to struggle, it started to fail, and it was like, what do you do? What is your plan now? I mean, we didn't have one, but we figured it out, and 4 months ago now, 3 months ago now, I sold the tech company to CNN for $25 million. And now I'm tasked with probably the biggest, hardest vine to swing on I've ever undertaken, which is to build a new company, and to build that company with the resources of CNN. And our ambition for that company is bigger than anything I've ever done before. And do we have a plan? Not really. Not really much of a plan. I want to end today with just a super quick little story. Yesterday, I got here to Hamburg after like a 15, 16-hour journey to get here. I missed some flight, got stuck in Amsterdam, and I was beaten, I was exhausted. I got on the plane, and I came straight here, and I did this wonderful Q&A with Christoph. Is he here? Is he here?
Yeah, Christoph.
Christoph, great. There he is. There's the name. We had a great Q&A. It was wonderful. And despite being so tired, it was just great. Anyway, I get back to my hotel room last night, and I started thumbing through Twitter, as one does, and I saw this tweet that I want to talk about it. And the tweet said, saw at Casey Neistat on OMR 17 stage. One comment, overvalued. So no, I want to talk about that. I do, and I think I can do it in 90 seconds. Maybe what this guy meant was that he doesn't like my creativity. And if that's the case, I get it. Creativity by definition is subjective. You can't make everybody happy. But what I think he meant, because he used the word overvalue, what I think he meant is that overvalued. So I wanted to address that, and I wanted to address that creativity aside. Let's just look at metrics for 1 second. Last year, 2016, my YouTube channel, I did 1 billion views. So that's 6 billion minutes of content viewed. That is 10,000 years of content that I made being consumed by people. And I'm not saying this to brag or boast, but if you look at, like a friend of mine, her name is Liza Kochi. Liza does 100 million views every month on YouTube. Liza has 10 million Instagram followers, and she has literally 10x. That's not hyperbole, that's fact. 10x the engagement of Kim Kardashian. Liza, she writes and directs and edits and stars in and produces and controls the distribution of all of her own content. And with that, she's built a bigger audience than any ad agency or creative house could ever buy. So I say this to you, dipshit, is she overvalued too? And the reason why I get so upset by that kind of stupidity is because to me, what that represents is my least favorite kind of thinking. And it's the kind of thinking that holds on to something, holds on to an old norm, because it's been historically successful. And it ignores a change, a seismic change that I think most everyone in this room is keenly aware of. And that changes, me, I'm a small example of that change, and I get to come on stages like this and be celebrated and all of this incredible stuff because I was, past tense, I was an outlier in this space, doing things nobody else had done before. And that's changing, that's no longer the case. I'm now one of many. But right behind me, Liza included, right behind me on my heels, is a tidal wave of creators that need nothing from anyone and are courting and building audiences beyond anything that's ever been possible before. And that is what the future looks like. So with that, I end by saying this. The people who hang on to this old way of doing things, the people who have the unwillingness to embrace what's next. That guy who sent the tweet, he is sitting on the deck of the Titanic, sipping champagne, and we creators are the fucking iceberg. Thank you. Take your water, man. Check out the class. That's the guy who wrote the tweet is here, I'm sorry.
Any questions from Bob? No questions?
No plan is the good plan, huh?
No plan is a plan. It's definitely not the only plan.
Was it a big accident? What just happened to you?
A big accident.
Yeah.
I think everything's a big accident. And I think that what's interesting is putting yourself in a position to embrace those kinds of accidents. And part of the impetus for me starting a technology company is I was looking at what I was doing in life, in my career. And I said, is there an opportunity for an exponential jump to the next thing? Because I was doing branded deal or commercial, after commercial, after commercial. And each one would get a little bit better. That's incremental growth in your career. And I said, is there an opportunity for an exponential growth, for a huge fucking accident to happen? And the answer was no. But by starting that tech company, who knows what could have happened? And the idea that the world's biggest news outlet would want to partner with me in such a huge earth-shattering way, that could have never happened if I hadn't first started that company and put myself in a position for an accident of that size to take place. A good question.
Yeah, we think smart guys. Yeah, if you
Smart audience here.
If you're busy drinking, we ask you guys. Who has the questions? Okay.
I come first. Let me just record this for my friends. I come from a third world country called El Salvador, which has a very amazing talent. I come from a third world country called El Salvador, which has a lot of amazing talent. But in this country, there is this old norm where, like, I was the guy who was sitting in the school making drawings and was being told by all my teachers that I was never going to be able to live of my art, of my drawings. I dropped out of graphic design because I joined, everybody told me like, oh, you know, go graphic design. Anyway, went out, dropped out. I'm like a high school guy. I built, thanks to the internet, I was able to register in the United States because we don't have payments online in my country.
Any questions?
Anyway, there is a lot of people over there who have amazing talent but have no self-esteem because they have been told that art will not make them a living. They will not be able to eat out of that. What would be your advice for those people?
Well, I would say this. One, thanks for your story. Two, I have no doubt that in El El Salvador, you see hardships that are far greater than anything you'll experience in the States, and most likely here in Germany as well. But one thing that I think is similar in El Salvador, similar with the struggle that you're describing no matter where you live, is that when you're trying to do something that has little precedence, you want to make a living off your drawings, you want to be a YouTuber, you want to work in some creative space where there's no predetermined trajectory, you will always be discouraged. And I think that's part of it, and I think that's what I react to when I see something like that tweet pisses me off so much, because that's reacting like, I don't know what this is, I don't understand this, so this is bad. And that is a universal obstruction that you will find no matter where you are, no matter what you're trying to do, so long as what it is you're aiming for is unprecedented. But I have no doubt that yours is harder than most living in a place like El Salvador.
I'm living out of my dreams, so good.
Hi there, Casey. My name is Axel. I'm from Berlin, moving now to the Ukraine. I have a question. We are in negotiations for selling our company. And what would be your recommendation for us to sell this live streaming app? And before that, to approach people like you to gain a little more traction for this?
Well, my advice in selling it is get as much money as they'll possibly but to work with people like me to get it to work. My answer to that's always the same, to make a great product. And that's a really frustrating answer to get, because the answer you want is like, here's who you email and you'll get them. But the truth is, you look at Snapchat. Snap's yesterday IPO, I think they closed at a $39 billion valuation. When Evan built that company, it was a couple kids on a high school campus using it. Its growth was purely based on the quality of the product. So I think that's part of it. I mean, that's a dismissive answer, and I don't mean to be dismissive, but I think that's part of it. Is like, there has to be some level of organic traction. And if you are in a position to sell your company, I'm sure that's taking place in some capacity. So how you grow from there is yeah, I don't know that I have an answer to that. I can tell you this, for whatever it's worth. I'm approached by all kinds of people all the time to help promote and partner with their products. Yet I still make videos that I do not get a cent for that promote products. And the only reason why I do that is because when the product is so interesting, is so fascinating, that I can't resist to talk about it. So if your product is that, it will invariably happen on its own. But in your position, I don't really answer that question. Good luck. Send them like a nice pair of shoes.
One second, I think we don't want to disappoint you. We take more questions, so we just stay here. I think we're going to have to. It's actually what's coming now is one of my favorite moments in my professional life. Every year, over and over again, we have something unusual coming up. At Online Marketing Rockstars, we have music that we didn't tell you about, and we have music now. People that you know, and why they are reshaping the stage a little bit and improving my desk.